back to the second episode of the redundancy season. If anything, I feel like this is the most important one because this is the one I hope people pick up if they're in shock and they're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I've never been through this. And this is the whole point of sharing it. I feel like I'm definitely ready and recovered. It took its time. I went through a lot since then, so I had to pick it up. But also because I've just got to make this clear. I do not share this because it makes me angry. Obviously just a little bit sad I had to go through that. But, I, as a business owner, especially one in this climate right now, where, small businesses, hospitality are really suffering right now with costs. And small businesses do not get an easy ride. We take a lot of risk for then not, especially at the minute, we're not getting a lot of support from the wider ecosystem. And if you work for a small business or a startup, it is going to be really hard to pay your salary if you're employed. And that's why I want to make clear, like, redundancies happen, and I see it from that perspective. But when they're not handled fairly, this is the key part. And for many mothers and women, or, people who don't fit the working system, don't get treated fairly in these circumstances. I have known women where they've done huge restructures and they've been the highest performer, but it's been them on the chopping block because they're pregnant. And I know this has happened. Whereas, like I said, I've said it in the previous podcast, my husband went through 2 redundancies and did very well out of them. And it was down to restructure, it was down to a merger. And, and it was the right time for him to move on. So they were so different to this experience. And I got to the point where I told you, like, why it wasn't fair, everything that happened, everything that went wrong. So now I think this is a really important part, was that to look back on, I did a really great job of handling it in the short term. Yes, there was some knee-jerk reactions when I called my husband and been like, this has happened, we're going to have to cancel nursery, cancel this, we're going to have to completely change our son's life. And he was like, wait, hold back, Caroline. None of those decisions need to be made yet. So don't make knee-jerk reaction decisions like I almost wanted to, but hopefully you have someone else in your life going, no, like, this is the first day, we don't need to do that. My husband was still away. I think my son had nursery or his childcare at the time come round. And what I did on my first day was the best thing I could have done. So I booked myself in for a spa day, as you do. Because I was like, I think I knew by that point the Monday was going to be my day where I come back. And basically, like I said before, you can come back and pitch part of the process was come back and pitch why your role shouldn't be made redundant, or come back and negotiate, which is what I did. Because I think I said in the last episode, it was quite clear they didn't want me to come back and pitch for my role. And I think that's a really important part. All the ego in me might have wanted to pitch for that, but I was exhausted, I was done, and it was really clear. And I'll tell you, the next chats I had with people supporting me, they were like, they've not given you, the HR people I spoke to were like, they've not given you enough time. It's quite clear they don't want you to do this. So just go through the process and try and get what is fair. So I went on my spa day, and then I actually, again, called another colleague because, like I said, I had 2 direct reports. One still works for me now, outsource, yay. And I called her because, my other colleague was like, yeah, you need to call and tell her this has happened. And again, she was shocked as well. And I also did do a check. I just messaged the HR person on Slack and be like, because I didn't want, at this point, I was like, no, I don't, I'm on a spa day and I don't want this to be held against me as part of the process. So I'm like, just to clarify, you do not want me to work today. Because I need that, the whole meeting was a blur. And I didn't want it to then be like, well, you should have done this as part of leaving, so we're not going to give you this. So I was like, okay, right, just check. So yeah, got the confirmation on Slack quite quickly. You're not expected to be on Slack today or to work as a result. I've got to take your wins where you can. So I went on a lovely spa day in central London, and I wasn't going to start planning for what I was going to do in my redundancy that day. I was just going to have a day to myself, but also start thinking about, what do I really want to do? Like, my brain was buzzing of like, what do I do next already? And, in an ideal world, people don't do that. You can just take the day for yourself. But, that's how I work. And probably most people in this position of like, how am I going to afford my mortgage? What am I going to do next? So I stopped off at like a notebook shop and found a book that said Employee of the fucking Year on the front. And I was like, yes, that book's calling for me. So I found a notebook. I also took with me, I'd had the book for a little bit. My friend had recommended it, The Source by Dr. Tara Swartz. So I was like, right, this felt like a good time to read this book. And it was a really good time to read that book because I just did some little exercises from there. And yeah, it's a great book for redundancy. Dr. Tara Schwartz, thank you. Love her. So I took that. And in this notebook, actually, I remember being in the spa. I wrote down, thinking of all the options. I wanted to be a founder. I wanted to run my own business. In what I knew, I did not want to be in the virtual assistant industry. I stuck to that clearly. So I just kind of gave myself free flow with a notebook. It was like I'd had my laptop attached to me for all these years, apart from probably the first 6 weeks, the only 6 weeks I took on my maternity leave, 6 to 8 weeks. I'd had my laptop pretty much attached to me for like 3 or 4 years, however long I'd been there for at this point. So it was very freeing not to take my laptop, have Slack with me. And I did that. And then I took myself to Selfridges for lunch and had a nice glass of Prosecco, another one. And yeah, had a really nice lunch. That's the point where I was telling my brother what I was doing. And he was like, this is going to work out to be a very expensive redundancy at this rate. And I was like, don't worry, I'm not going on spa days and lunches in Selfridges for this whole time. I gave myself a day and it was a lovely day and I needed it. And I just it was like a little leaving party for myself. I was like, yes, I do this. But then, I also knew in the back of my head had the next day where my son was going to nursery or was in childcare, whatever. And I knew I was like, right, tomorrow I've got to get to work and get to work on what I'm going to do and start planning that. The next day, although while I did get to work, I got to work in a nice place in King's Cross. I also went to a class at Frame, who we've had full circle. We had the founder on there, but I went to like a dance class because that's what I love to do. And I hadn't had the time the whole time. And I was like, right, I've, been made redundant. I don't have to work. I don't have to be on call for anyone. I've got some work I have to do for this meeting, but I went to a dance class and put myself in a happy place. So that was a really good decision of mine as well. So remember to find your joy. And that was it. So I went to a dance class. And then that day I went to the Lighterman, King's Cross. It was very quiet, very nice. Had a nice breakfast. Still an expensive redundancy, but there we go. I think I also bought a washing machine, knee-jerked into that. Never mind. That day, because I had access to everything still, they weren't allowed to block me off. So that's something, I was an employee still. And I pulled off everything, all the evidence, because I was so strict at clocking my time on Toggle. And you could have seen for years the hours I was working when I was like part-time after 8 weeks and I was doing like 6-7 hour days plus probably. I pulled it off. I just was like, I need all the evidence to show that I was doing a great job here, even though I didn't actually need that because in the redundancy, it was apparently because my role wasn't there anymore. So, but I didn't know. Everything uncertain. Obviously, I had no trust for what was going on. And I also had to make a choice about what to do. So I pulled people together to help me. You can't do this alone. I obviously had my husband's support, had my family's support, had my friends' support. But practically, I also just needed some help to pull together what I was going to do. So my husband kindly introduced me to his HR person from his company. I feel like HR people. So this is another thing as well. A girl on my team was like, surely the HR person can help you through this. And I'm like, no, like she's on the business side here. Like I can't go to her and tell her what I'm going to do. Like she's on the business side. And I feel like that's what's such a shame with internal HR. I mean, I'm not in that world. I don't know. But I feel like then if you're friends with any HR people, they will always help you out in redundancy. So I had my very good friend, Katie, and my other friend, Claire, is a lawyer, just my best friend, so just really support me through that. And my dad was a business owner. So I just had like those three, like be like, okay, help me with this kind of thing. And they helped me put together. So yeah, and also that call with who gave me some time was my husband's HR person. And she was the one who really highlighted it's not fair and you need to get what's fair. Just having that external perspective. She didn't know me. All she knew was what I told her and the situation. And that's what's so great about it. It's like that's what it comes down to, is what was fair. So obviously they'd offered me the minimum redundancy package for my time, which is like statutory redundancy. I think you get paid 6 weeks or something like that, and some other things as well. And yeah, so I doubled it basically. We decided to go for doubling it and put all my reasons down. And I prepped everything on like what had not been fair in this process. they put in my meeting, by the way, and they were like, okay, you can do it virtually or in person. Our preference is virtually. Such a mistake. And so I'm like, great, if that's your preference, I'm going to go with the opposite. And you can do this face to face with me. I'm such an arsehole sometimes. And I also chose, because we were in the offices they were in was co-working. Our go-to one was in Old Street. And I was like, we're going to meet in the King's Cross one. I was like, I'm just going to throw you off and we go to the office that's nearest me. And yeah, you're going to do this to my face. Brilliant. So I got it all together and I actually felt really good. I actually did. I was nervous, but I felt really confident with what I put together, having had I can't stress this enough. It was my support network that got me through this. And then also my friend had messaged me the night before and it's like, we're coming for drinks at your house on Friday. So Friday night, I got quite hammered. We did the North London Limbo Championships. My friends came round and just like you talked about it enough, but then also didn't talk about it as well and just had fun, to be honest, for the good old like girls together in your kitchen, just having fun. And that was just what I needed as well. You know, it was a good 2-day hangover and it was Father's Day on the Sunday, but also my son's christening. Really well timed. So then I had to get through my son's christening on the Sunday, which was lovely. And, you know, it was hard. I had to, you know, get through my son's christening with like everyone there. Bless my cousin. I remember later on, she'd got a new job and she was like, I didn't want to tell you because you just lost your job. And I was like, oh, well, that wouldn't have stopped me being happy for you, but that was really sweet. But it was like kind of this looming thing there, but I guess the christening also helped me forget about it. And then, yeah, I had also planned my outfit as well, which I really recommend. Looked up, I mean, I think it's called dopamine dressing now, but I kind of looked up colours that would make me feel better. I've never really done that. I mean, maybe I have in performing a little bit, but so maybe that's it from my performing background. I know if I'm like wearing something that makes me feel confident, it helps me. And I also decided I chose this place. So I was like, I'm going to arrive early. I'm going to put on some meditative music. All went a bit like those sort of vibes, a bit like I was giving birth again, apart from nicer outfit. I turned up and they were already there and were not expecting me to be early, which really threw them off, which kind of also pleased me. And I did play games a little bit to be like, right, you've been stringing me along this whole time, not treated me fairly, and it's been quite appalling. I remember my former boss, asking me twice what I'd done on the Sunday. I was like, I've just told you, it was my son's christening. Thanks a lot for making me redundant just before that. And I was like, anyway, I sat down. I just got my laptop out. God knows what I was doing because I didn't have any work to do. And but put on some really like calming music on Spotify or something. And then the woman who was making me redundant as well came over. You know what she said? She was like, oh, I was at my friend's yesterday. Her kids were running around. She's like, you guys just don't get a break, do you? And I was like, no. And then this is the part I take away. She said, nice dress, by the way. Like she knew I dressed for it. I was just like, thanks. You wonder why I had to play a game a little bit. You can see it right there in some of those interactions. And also I decided to think, the whole time the culture was we all kind of carried our laptops around. We went into meetings with laptops. So I decided I'm going to don't need a laptop for this meeting. I don't want to hide my face. I want to be fully there and know that this is what I mean. And so basically, in that meeting, I did have a list of things that I still never fully shared with them because I didn't have to. I have a list of things that bullets of why things weren't fair, but I stuck with the basics that the process wasn't fair. They hadn't offered me the most senior role, which they should do in this process. They hadn't offered me a manager role, which they were advertising for. They just offered me the normal PA role. And also the fact they hadn't given me enough time to put a pitch together to say why my role was needed. I said to them, there's loads of things that shows you're not taking this seriously and this isn't a fair redundancy. So I had it printed on paper, like all the demands I had for my redundancy and kind of passed it through to them. And then, I think at the end, because they knew I had on paper written down, and I said, there's lots more things I could say that I'm not going to share at this moment. And she said to me, can we have that piece of paper? And I was like, no, that's a whole other process if you want these things in writing. Like I only gave them the paper with what I was asking for written down. I was like, so they think I'm stupid. I was like, no, I'm not handing you all my cards right now. And also that week, God, actually, I can't even take credit. Like, your friends would tell you to say this, but it's actually my husband's HR person who told me to say this, or say something along these lines. They were up for, it was something like a Lloyd's best employer for working mums. It was like a prestigious award by a bank, like best employer for working mums. That week were the awards. As I walked out, I went, good luck for the awards on Thursday. They didn't win, thank God. Otherwise, I would have been making complaints. They were like, thanks. Oh God, it got petty, but I went there. I don't have any regrets on that. I think they were quite surprised because I had been so broken towards the end. And this is where my performing background, I think, comes in. I was just like, no, I will, I've got the support of the people behind me. I think if I was on my own with this, but I knew people support me. And my HR friend, every time I was like, should I just ask for double this? She's like, yeah, go for it. She was like, you can ask, like, what's the harm? At this point, you've lost your job. I think that's what I'm trying to get across. You've lost your job. Go and ask for what's fair. To be honest, I feel like I could have taken it further. But anyway, and that wasn't the end of it. I think it was only one more meeting we had. Again, demanded it in person. The women didn't show up virtually this time, but basically I turned up and they were like, right. They went by line, going, you've asked for this, we're giving you this. You've asked for this, we're giving you this. And so at the end of it, I was like, so you're giving me everything I've asked for? And they're like, yes. And I was like, great, cool, thanks. See you later. Can I have it in writing, please? So yeah, the final meeting was a bit easier. It was just like, you want this, we're giving you this. I was like, great, met all my demands. Thank you very much. So it meant I got 3 months pay. In the end, I think, yeah, it was 3 months pay. And it was a little bit longer because it didn't start, I think it was July, they made me redundant, and then the whole process takes 2 or 3 weeks. I got paid all that time, so then it ended up being 3.5 weeks. And I did take some time for myself. It's stressful. I did need to find a job. I did find a job quite quickly through a family friend. It wasn't the right job for me, but something we'll talk about in the next one is that I think also, I've done a lot of recovery after almost losing my second child. I see it a lot still sometimes on social media, I have to say, like by quite, maybe not my generation, maybe a generation before, really successful business women. I'm like, I give myself 24 hours to grieve and then I move on. And it's like, I kind of did that with this. Like, I've got 24 hours and then I've got to sort out. And I did. That's all I had at that moment. I had a day. And then the next day I was like, right, I've got to sort out what I'm doing for this redundancy. But that doesn't mean I can just grieve how I was treated. And I think at the end of the day, I remember my sister-in-law saying to me when I was struggling in my next job, she was like, your trust has gone. And she was right. It was so wise. Because it's like being broken up with. It was like a heartbreak. And I remember thinking this at the time. It was that I hadn't had that feeling since I'd had a heartbreak in my younger years. And it was that feeling of and so I wasn't going to walk into my next job just trusting them. It just wasn't going to happen. I think no matter where I worked, unless I think I'd needed probably coaching at that point to support me through it. But yeah, that was my initial plan, and so we'll talk more about that on the long-term recovery from it, and some reassuring things I've heard from women who were further along the process during my time. But I just want to make it clear, I think the whole point of this is you cannot do this on your own, and don't feel ashamed. I think the shame is very, very hard, and it is really hard. I know through friends who've gone through it as well. They had good people supporting them as well. This is where I say, if you're not friends with people in HR or law, go find some. Go find some. They're the most helpful friends you can have. So thank you to them, for everyone who gave up their time to me. I'll dedicate this episode to my core team of experts that I had in my life at that point. So thank you. And yes, if this resonated with you, how did you get through your redundancy? Maybe there's things I could have done better, and you can support with. What advice would you give to someone who is going through this right now? Thank you so much for listening. So to summarise, I'm aware I've spoken a lot about my story, what I did. I think obviously part of the point of sharing stories is that hopefully you can take something away from this. But I also do want to share some practical tips. And I think the first one is pretty obvious, and I'll talk about it more in the third episode, but take your time for yourself to process. And I know that that's really hard as a mum, and especially mum with young children. Honestly, I remember I felt guilty that spa day I talked about. I felt guilty because it's like, I'm not working. My kid's only 10 months. I felt like I should be at home. And it's like, well, I just went through something that was really big. And anyone in my life was like, that, don't be stupid, go like hang out with yourself, go sort yourself out. And I think it's realizing you can't, and obviously as well, not just the kid factor, but if your partner works a really busy job or your work haven't given you enough time to prepare for your redundancy meeting, and if they haven't, I'd actually empower you. They didn't give me enough time, but I decided to get ready for that Monday. But I'll ask for longer, because that should be part of the process. If you need longer to prepare for your redundancy meeting and, they haven't taken into account that you're a parent, and so they did it on a Friday, for example, that would have been really awful timing for me. I needed that Thursday and Friday to prepare because I had my son's christening on the Sunday, as I mentioned. So take some time for yourself to process and enough time for you to be able to plan properly. Get your support team in place. And not everyone will have the huge luxury I had of having legal friends, HR friends, a dad who was a business owner. But start with Pregnant Then Screwed. I don't think I knew about them at this stage, the perks of being the first of your friends to have babies. But I did know about them when it came to COVID and knowing what the rules were when I was pregnant and I was being asked to go back to work. So Pregnant Then Screwed was so helpful. It was an absolute minefield during COVID, knowing what you were meant to do when, and no one knew. But Pregnant Then Screwed keep on top of all the latest, and they can point you in the right direction. I have no doubt. If you need to invest in some support, if there's some free support out there for you, go seek it out. And it's okay to need that emotional support as well. You might not have that, but I really needed those people that I could be like, this is shit. And it might be you can be practical and all the practical, but you struggle to ask for help emotionally, or maybe you need to ask a friend to look after your child while you need to prepare for this, and maybe it's more the support at home and support emotional that you need. Identify with what gives you confidence. You're going to need confidence walking into that meeting, and it doesn't come naturally to all of us. I do think my performing background has given me those things when that I've got real adrenaline filled moments, when I've got moments that I'm feeling rock bottom in confidence to pull it. I somehow managed to pull it out the bag, and I did then. And for me, I knew that was, despite her comments, power dressing, going to a fun dance class, turning up early and listening to a meditative track like that. Those were things I knew would put me in a confident frame of mind. And confidence is a really, really hard thing to pull out. So what will give you confidence? Maybe going for a coffee right before your meeting will help you. I know sometimes I've actually done that for performing. I'm like, I need to take my mind off it. I need someone who will just have a coffee with me and not talk about it. Maybe that's something like that, or planning something really fun right after the meeting. So your mind's in like, I'm excited. Remember, nerves and excitement scientifically are the same feeling. So really find a way to drum that up and build that. Is slow breathing. It might be downloading something like Insight Timer, learning how to slow breathe. I bet there's meditations for like meetings or presentations. They could be really helpful for you. So go on things like Insight Timer. I also like Other Ship for breath work. I really believe in breathing and mindset work, and there are 2 free apps, or ones you could get free trials of, that I'm sure there will be people out there that have done meditations for hard work scenarios and hard meetings. And if there are, they'll be on Insight Timer, I have no doubt, or Headspace is another one as well. And if you have time, do things that make you feel better. I have a cleaner. I'm not a fan of cleaning the house, but there is something about the slow dopamine it gives you, and you're going to be running on adrenaline. I know there's TJ Power, he has a book on your dopamine, and it might be you need to stop scrolling social media so much during this period, but you might need to go for a drink with your friends. It might be, reading a book. Like me, I picked up The Source, or it might be a fiction book, like for the first time, you're like, oh God, I've got time to read a book. Do it. Do something that lights you up and makes you feel better, that gives you that hope from after this meeting. And I think my biggest thing as well, because there's so much narrative of like, don't jump back into a job, take this time. It's like, well, BS, you might need to earn money. And I think I said this before, but just remember, it's okay to take the job you need now, and it's not necessarily the dream job, the next job, and we'll talk about that in the next episode. So I hope these practical tips have helped you.